Hi, everybody.
Morning, afternoon.
Good afternoon. Hello.
Good afternoon, Dion.
Hi, everybody. Um, my name is Dion. I'm marketing manager here at Solutions PT. With me this afternoon, we have two of my very good friends at Solutions PT. Andy Graham, our solutions manager. Hello, Andy.
Hi, Dion.
And we've got Stuart Palmer, one of our senior system architects at Solutions PT.
Hi, Dion.
Hi, Stu. Well, I'm here on the, what do they call it, on the bridge of the Starship Enterprise, enjoying the view into space. And whereabouts you, Andy?
I'm on the bridge of some Star Wars ship. I'm sure there's people on the call that know exactly which one it is. I couldn't remember. That's very poor of me.
Right, and Stu, where are you?
Me, I'm in Iron Man's workshop. Why not?
Okay, very nice. Okay. Well, welcome once again, everybody, to all our participants this afternoon, everybody who's joined us for this webinar. We, of course, going to talk about InTouch 2020. And this is, of course, part of a bigger release of ours. We call it our Aviva Edge to Enterprise 2020 webinar series. So, Andy, if you could maybe show just a little bit. So if you go to our website, you'll find all the information. Just go to solutionspt.com and you'll find on our homepage, you can get to all details about this release of ours. And if you click in there, you'll find the page with all the information on where you can register for the webinars. And you will see that we are on webinar number 2 of 11. So there's a whole whack of webinars still waiting for you, a whole lot of interesting stuff that we are discussing. Well, something that you may have seen, we talk about is, and you'll see it here in this list of webinars, we don't talk about Wonderware InTouch anymore, we talk about Aviva InTouch. And that's a naming taxonomy change that is busy taking place at the moment. So with this release of our Edge to Enterprise 2020 releases, we are transitioning our naming from Wonderware to Aviva. Isn't that right, Andy?
That's correct, Dion. But yes, it's still very much the same products you've been using for the last 30 years, the same underlying code base and the same very well-known worldwide brand that you've been dealing with all the great stuff that comes along with it.
Yeah, and so one of the goals that we have with this name change is just, you'll see together with the name change, we're making it easier to understand our portfolios. The names that we're going to call stuff going forward is going to be much easier for you to interpret what the different components and products does. But of course, we're talking about this webinar series called Edge to Enterprise. So I'm going to ask Andy just to quickly enlighten us to what is this all about?
Thanks, Dion. Yeah, so we identified 3 key themes all around connect, empower and transform, which all relates to, I suppose, our factories are now smarter. There's lots of different connected equipment, sensors, devices. We obviously got our PLCs, all the data acquisition that's in there. But we're doing these things so that we can empower our people to make the right decisions, improve efficiency, reduce downtime, etc., etc. And really transform our factories, supposed to all our IT to OT convergence we've talked about, lots of good themes along the bottom there, all to help us strive to do better in our factories. And that's what the whole software portfolio does and helps you guys to achieve. So yes, today we're very much talking about Aviva InTouch HMI. And it spans across all verticals that you see here. We've been doing this for 30 years, we'll continue to do so. And it is the market leader out there, and for very good reason, that it's always been renowned for things like its ease of use, It's device agnostic. It doesn't care what type of things we're connecting to, and it even goes out to things like weather APIs these days. So does the entire portfolio, but InTouch does too. And there's lots of feature-rich graphics and things like that, which Stu's going to kindly enlighten us on shortly, and some of the latest things that are coming in this latest release. But one of the big reasons as to why these things change is through technology that's coming through the market, through trends that we're seeing, things like big data analytics. You've probably heard for many years now. Everything's mobile these days. I'm not going to go into them all, but the key to this is that we actually want to drive that customer value, and that's what we're doing. We're not just implementing these technology and these trends for the sake of it. It's to ensure that we can drive that value for you guys to improve that bottom line. And it's quite a difficult task because everything's changing so quickly. You'll probably know that we work on an agile development methodology, so work on a quarterly basis now, looking at these technologies, these trends, and implementing the right things that fit for you guys. It's a completely shifting landscape, so everything probably 5 years ago, maybe slightly longer, was all very much local at your plant level. We now have lots of different architectures out there. We have things that are hybrid up to a cloud. We have really small IoT type sensor devices and things like that. And there's the evolving user, the different generation of people that are coming through the midst that are expecting these things at the fingertips. The things are changing. So I'll just take us back to our Edge to Enterprise architecture, and it can very loosely, probably not so simply, but loosely boils down to these 3 types of locations. So your asset location, your control room or your unified operations center, and all the way across the enterprise for a greater visibility. So at that asset location, this is where we are talking about Aviva InTouch HMI typically. I'll touch on that a bit more later on. Also, as we go up into things like control rooms, unified operation centers, you may go into something like system platform. And then as we get further afield, this is where we're looking at things like cloud, and getting out into things like integrated development environments and Aviva Insight, which is our cloud platform. And obviously these are all very much a connected architecture these days, and it wouldn't be worth mentioning our software without mentioning the complete solution stack on top of that. So we're talking about the hardware that's associated with it. There's lots of different flavors that you can put out there. Obviously we provide complete solutions that closely knit together with those Aviva software platforms, and Aviva themselves actually endorse some of the products like Stratus in their portfolio. So it's, that collaboration and that support portfolio extends beyond just having a software platform. We're talking about a very closely knit software and hardware together, and aligning that through us as your channel.
Yeah, no, I suppose, Andy, the important thing is making sure that this all works, that we do the hard work of making sure that all of this works together for you.
Yeah, and it could be something as simple as, well, we've tested it for one. It could be that our systems architects do a great job. We've got Stu on the call. He's instrumental in understanding what sizing is required for the hardware that we provide to ensure that your software runs effectively, based on the amount of I/O you're connecting to and things like that. And those types of things are really important, and we provide all those services for our customers. Then if we expand out and just change that picture very, very slightly, I obviously mentioned InTouch at that asset level, but it does span out into the plant, and it'd be wrong to say that it doesn't, because I know InTouch has been around for such a long time. It's much more capable than just your typical HMI that you'd have at the bottom layer in terms of panels. What we're really referring to here is something that can sit at that overarching level, and that I understand there's a lot of customers out there that'll be doing that. If you're getting out into the multi-site realms, that's when you'd probably look at something like a system platform. It's not to say you wouldn't use InTouch across your entire estate, because again, I know there's lots of people that do that, but you're unlikely to make geographically distributed connections to different sites, and have InTouch as your central control room, that is really where System Platform comes into its own, and beyond. So, I mean, we're not going to cover all these products again in this. This is really centered around that InTouch HMI that we want to start delving into.
I suppose, Andy, the whole webinar series, we're gonna cover the rest. So if you're interested in, you know, all the different parts, but I think the important thing is that our portfolio has the wide scope from edge to enterprise.
Absolutely, yeah, you've hit the nail on the head, Dion. And then from a journey perspective, and you've probably seen this picture quite a lot. So this refers to how mature an organization is, and the more mature you are, the more value you're going to get out of your systems. We typically see a lot of customers in this middle part, this consistent phase, which means that we do have centralized processes, we have control rooms. So out there we have lots of customers in that prepared state where we have size of automation. And our Aviva InTouch HMI sits at this typical level here, just to put it in a slightly different picture for you. And as we get to the end of the presentation, I'll show you a slightly different picture based on some of the things that are coming through that enable us to get further afield than those two levels, if you like, to expand that journey. One thing we haven't talked about yet is some of the commercial flexibility that's available to us these days. So, I mean, absolutely, you can still purchase the products perpetually as you'd expect. So, and that's been the model for as far as I can remember. Some of you may have come across subscription already because we have sold it, and the reason you may not have heard about it in a more general term is because it depends on your requirements. And again, as solutions PT, we're very good at understanding what your requirements are and then scoping exactly what is the right fit for you. We're always very keen, and it's very important to us that we supply the right fit for exactly what you need at the most cost-effective way that we can do. But one of the things that has come in is something called Aviva Flex, and this is a simplification of the model. So yes, if you have an InTouch, I'm sure quite a lot of you out there that have got InTouches have probably got historians as well, and there's a perpetual outlay that is required to be able to get that functionality, so to get that more feature-rich historical data. This is just one example, but because we have so many products in the portfolio, Flex allows us to, I suppose, choose what product combination we'd like from the credits that we need. So we decide how many credits would be required, and again, it's a subscription basis, so it works over a 1, 3, or 5 year model. So that you can get exactly what you need to fulfill your requirements, which might be more than just buying a standalone InTouch application or standalone InTouch license. And we can really start to get unlimited access and visibility then for more people in the organization. I mean, there's some really exciting changes for InTouch, which I'll talk right near the very end of the presentation, that Aviva Flex is really coming into its own in that regard, but it's just really an introduction into what we're talking about here.
So to me, when I started looking at Flex, and it really made sense to me. It really means you don't commit yourself to buying one part of our portfolio. You actually get access to the entire portfolio, and you can mix and match using the credits and change your mind later on as you mature.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really important thing. And again, we work with customers to define their roadmaps. And if they came to us partway through the year and said, we really want to get some, I don't know what it might be, some workflow applications in there, then we could do that through utilizing something like this and I suppose use those credits. And then if we know we're not going to overutilize those credits before the end of the year, then we can add extra credits on. It's a very flexible way of doing it, and it means that we can get access to much more, as you say. Just before I hand over to Stuart, I thought it relevant to mention a bit about the product life cycle. And again, this is probably something that most of you are aware of, but when software is released, it goes through a 5-year cycle, if you like. So the first 1 to 3 years of that first release, we're really looking at mainstream support in that that respect. So that means that we get things like full technical assistance on issues, using existing support programs like the Customer First programs that I'm sure you're familiar with, access to patches, service packs, OS security updates, hotfix requests. There's lots of things that exist in there that are really important. And these are just some of the reasons as to why we always say that, as do most software providers out there, it's important to make sure you try and stay as up to date as possible with your software. As we get further out, your extended support offers something very, very similar, which exists as part of the next 2 years. And as you go a bit further out, really, you could come up against queries, or you could ask us queries where we'd say, well, actually, there's things that are resolved, or there's things that have been added to the software within that 5-year period that really now we're urging you to upgrade to a later version. And just to give you an idea of some of the versions that we're talking about, obviously we're looking today at version 2020, so that's obviously in mainstream support. The 2017 update 1 and above is also in mainstream support. The extended support, the flat 2017 version is there, and then anything older than that, so the 2014, 2012 and InTouch 10.1, 10, anything like that is now all in mature phase of support. And there's lots of reasons as to why we'd upgrade. It isn't just because we're telling you to based on our software. Yes, there's lots of security enhancements that exist in our products as we update them, and there's obviously lots of product enhancements that come through the midst that might be appealing to you, especially these days, because believe me, there's lots of things that we can get excited about these days, and sure, I'll show you some of those things. But one of the things is operating system supportability. And that's one of the things that came to the forefront very well. It has done over the past X number of years, because the software is aligned so closely to Microsoft. As they start to remove support of critical OS updates for things like Windows XP, Windows 7, all these things that go out of support from a Microsoft standpoint, it's important that we try and urge our customers to get up to date so that you can keep those systems secure, cyber secure, and keep applying those Windows updates, because it's really important to us as well that you're running on these supported operating systems. So it's a very good reason. And if you've got any queries about the version you're running, what it's compatible with, then by all means, please get in touch with us, and we're happy to help discuss how you move, how you migrate, upgrade, whatever it might be. But with that, I'll hand over to Stu, and he'll talk you through some of the key themes and show you some of the demos.
Sorry, just before you start, Stu, I just want to remind everybody there is a Q&A section. I forgot to mention it right in the beginning. There's a Q&A section right at the bottom of your screen. So if you have questions, please post them there. And at the end of the presentation, we'll address as many of those questions as we possibly can. But it's over to you, Stu.
Thanks, Dion. So I'll sort of pick up from where Andy's just left off, the new 2020 release. So we talk about key themes in this slide, and you can see there that key themes are engineering efficiencies, user experience, and hardened security. We talk about adding functionality throughout the last 30 years, and InTouch is still doing that. We're adding more support for standalone applications to introduce industrial graphics into those, integration with Historian, new look and feel to how the applications work and how you interact with those, more user-focused functionality, things like the web client, providing read and write to and from that, support for new components within their native applications for Apple or Android devices, and hardening of the product based around security functions and features as well. So let's have a look at some of those engineering efficiencies that we're going to gain. So new InTouch Application Manager, it's had a facelift, it looks more modern, is more streamlined in the way that we create our new InTouch applications and how we interact with those. The new InTouch applications can now have industrial graphics built into them without the need for an SQL backend or database, none of the framework that goes with it, and connectivity into Historian directly now from InTouch HMI. And that allows us just to record data at much higher resolution, much quicker over the database or into the database. Sorry
to interrupt you. You talk about industrial graphics. I think most people will be familiar with orchestra graphics or orchestra graphics. It's also a name change that we're busy with. So with the Aviva name change, we're also doing a change in what we call our graphic environment to change it to industrial graphics.
Yeah, thanks, Dion. Yeah, that's exactly right. So one of those key engineering things that you just saw was the new cross-reference utility. And that now includes an option for us to search the graphical toolbox. So that will search throughout all your custom properties of all those graphics that are in your toolbox that are not actually being embedded into InTouch windows. That's really good if you're doing like dynamic loads of your graphics into your applications, or you're using the show graphic capabilities that you don't have to put InTouch graphics directly into an InTouch window anymore. You can call those directly from the graphic toolbox libraries. So really enables you to see where and when InTouch tags are being used. So much more effective. So Dion talked there about orchestra graphics being renamed as industrial graphics. That's because the industrial graphics are now available across the portfolio of the visualization tools. So be that InTouch for System Platform, OMI, Aviva InTouch, the cloud hosted solution. All those graphics are developed in the same studio tool, same symbol editor. They can be shared into the integration studio, and then you can download those into the individual products when you need them. Really talks about how we can make our engineering a bit more efficient. We build a graphic once, we use it across multiple products. Allows us to collaborate much more across our development teams, across sites, central management of all of that information. We also talked about cloud-based graphics in our little key themes. So here is how you introduce or how you connect into the Integration Studio central repository. So there's a video that I'll run through now. So you'll see there's a new option within InTouch Window Maker that gives us access to the Integration Studio portal. So you enter your credentials in there. You don't have to be a corporate member of Aviva to have access to this. You just have to use your development subscription. Once you've signed up and you've created a instance within the multi-tenanted solution, you can then access all your individual instances. And as an SI, that could be really useful if you're managing multiple customers' environments. So once you've connected to the cloud, you can then decide which content or which storage location you want to view inside your graphical toolbox. You can see there I have one coming directly from a content storage location. And then I've got both cloud graphics and local graphics available to use within my InTouch application. So if I've updated or used any graphics that I now feel might be useful for my colleagues to use elsewhere, I can upload those to the central location. And as part of that, when I select the graphics, you can see there I've selected one folder with 4 graphics in it. But as part of those 4 graphics, there are many more that are used within those symbols. So all of that content gets uploaded, so those graphics remain fully functional when you download them and use them elsewhere. And then we can just drag and drop from the cloud directly into our InTouch applications to use them.
I think, Stu, this is real game changer kind of stuff. you know, giving you the ability now to have the centrally managed cloud-based repository of all your graphics, and you can share it, you know, across the globe to any people. I think it's a very significant change that we're seeing in the market here.
Yeah, very powerful. I mean, we have SIs that are, you know, all around the world, global SIs that have departments in Europe, in the Middle East, in the Pacific, in Asia, in America. You know, we have system integrators, we have end users who use system platform all over the globe. So yeah, centrally managed standards, graphics, look and feel across the whole portfolio. It's real game changer. Okay, so we're going to look at some of those tools now. I'm going to do a live demo. So what we'll see first off is InTouch Application Manager. So they've actually renamed it now. So you no longer see Wonderware directory structure in your menus. You see Aviva InTouch. So if we just scroll down, you'll see the familiar InTouch HMI Application Manager. When we open that, you'll see that it has a new look and feel. So you can see there we've got a new user interface. Still has a lot of the same functionality that you're used to, all of the database load and database dumps. All of those functions are still available, just in a different, more user-friendly format. You can see there the new web client service and the Insight Publisher that's now put into the InTouch Application Manager. We've done many presentations and webinars. We did one recently, myself and Dion, about how you utilize that and how you configure it. I can have a look at that if you're not familiar with it. Look at what that looks like. We now have different viewing options in the client tool as well, in the Application Manager. So you can see a detailed view, you can see small icons, just a little representation of what the applications look like, or you can get that large icon feel with name and the description and the resolution of the application all in one place. So much more user-friendly, much more intuitive look and feel. I talked about streamlining the workflows when you create applications. This new application button at the bottom here. So if I click on this new application, it brings me up the little wizard to create an application. Again, much more of a modern look and feel than previously. You've got the different options to select templates that you as default, or you might have created yourself as a system integrator, as a user, an end user. You may have already created some templates that give you the look and feel for your applications that you want, and you can just pull those in to your applications and build from there. In this case, I'm just going to use a standalone application with symbol library added. So I've got no database in the back end. I've got no framework that I need to create as part of that application. So I just click on next, and then I get all the information that I used to have to put in a number of windows in the old Application Manager. I get that all now in one place. So screen resolution, description, the name of the application, where it's stored, that all now comes in one place. So it makes it real easier to create that application. And you can see within 2 clicks, I've got a new application created, rather than having to go through that wizard that took you 9 or 10 clicks to get through. Previously, it's now much more streamlined.
And Stu, I suppose the significant thing there was, you said you wanted to include what we used to call orchestra symbols, or now the industrial graphics. You didn't need to create that database thing in the back end. I see that was quite rapid that it did. Yeah.
Previously, it may have took 10 minutes to create that database and import all of the content that you required as part of that. Now, because you're not using that database instance, it's much more instant, shall we say, during that application creation. So if I open this now in Window Maker, this is where some of the security and performance enhancements come in as well. Window Maker loads much quicker than it used to. It doesn't have to look for that licensed server anymore. It will load Window Maker, it'll load Window Viewer, and then it will assign itself to a license. Just makes that whole loading and uptime, start up time much quicker. So my application's now loaded. You can see I've got the industrial graphics there on the right hand side. Those are loading in. We saw as part of the video there the new button that introduces the cloud connectivity. I can't show you a live demonstration of that today. They are actually at AVEVA, they're actually improving the security of the storage location. So they're doing some cybersecurity hardening at the moment, so it's unavailable just yet, but in the coming weeks it will be back up and running, so you can have a go at that yourself if you need to. You can see there we've got the web client button and we've got a runtime button with in the new format. So let's have a look at some of the new functionality that I talked about earlier. So we talked about connectivity into Historian. So let's go into Special, Configure, Historical Login, and that's exactly where you would have gone previously to enable login in InTouch. Now we have this additional option here for storage to Historian. Now when you select this, what we're actually doing is we're using the technology that's been ported across from application server. We're using the Historian client access layer to push this data to Historian, which is very different to the way that InTouch used to work if you used it with Historian. So you would create either a remote IDaaS or an IDaaS in your Historian that pulled the data, so it was more of a pull mechanism, which made it harder for security and the DCOM connectivity across the network, all of that. This just takes that away from it, and you can introduce things like store and forward capability into the application. So yeah, can add a suffix or a prefix to the tag dictionary as well. So when we have multiple customers out there who use many InTouch applications across their control room, across their plant, across their line, on their assets as HMIs. You might have many different InTouch applications that are reporting data back to one central Historian. Those may share common naming conventions, they may share the same tag dictionary, but this allows us to really differentiate which tags are being reported from which location. There is also the advanced settings here as well that enable us to do things like compression, throttle the bandwidth usage. So depending on what kind of network you're working on, you may want to adjust those figures. Things like store and forward thresholds. So how big is that storage location going to be? How long before we go into a store and forward period? So depending on how much data your system or your solution is going to lose, based on things like disconnect periods and stuff. You can tweak that there as well. So you may not want it to go into store and forward if you lose connection for 1 or 2 seconds, because you may be able to do without 1 or 2 seconds worth of data. But once you start getting up to 30 seconds, a minute, then that's when it really becomes important of how long you want to be without that, or without it storing locally. Another advantage here of having the ability to select both InTouch Historical Login and Historian is that if for whatever reason your Historian is unavailable, that could be server maintenance, network issues, upgrades of Historian, upgrades of networking infrastructure, you now have the ability to log locally as well at the same time. So maybe I could keep 7 days worth of data on my local machine, stops my local hard drive from filling up too quickly if I'm only storing 7 days worth of data, but it does give me that buffer to still visualize historical information for a period while my historian is being serviced or maintained or is unavailable. So very good. You can still do both options there as well. So I talked about industrial graphics. There is a new section within the industrial graphics folder called web widgets. Called widgets. And that is a location that you can store web widgets to. The first one of those released by Aviva is the Carousel widget. Now the Carousel widget allows you to do a slideshow of symbols or a slideshow of InTouch windows. Really useful if you've got a station that, an InTouch station that you want to have graphics roll round when nobody's using it. So that might be, let's say, an alarm screen, an overview screen, and a visualization of some KPIs. You can have it roll round in like a slideshow presentation mode through those screens. So if anything does appear on an alarm screen or an overview screen goes into an alarm state, just at a glance, the operators can see them as they're rolling around without having to log on or, all of that kind of stuff. It makes it available. I'll show you how that's configured. It's really easy to use. So if I just create a new symbol, let's call it Carousel. Pop that into the familiar looking symbol editor. Done in the very same way, or exactly the same way that you would do a graphic or a symbol embedded into a graphic. We just select it and drop it onto the canvas. Let's make it a little bit bigger for our demo purposes. And then see here, if I right click, there's no options for custom properties or properties within the widget itself. Those properties become available in the properties tab. If we just scroll down to the bottom here, you'll see the widget properties, and that's where they live. When you click on the expansion button at the bottom here, it loads those properties into the familiar custom properties dialog box that we're all used to seeing. And there are 6 properties, very simple, that are available for the web widget. You've got an autoplay, you've got your interval, how long each graphic will be displayed. If you can interact with the slideshow with your keyboard, if it's on loop, and if you want to pause it. I'm just going to leave those as default. I'm going to select in a few graphics from my my industrial graphics toolbox. So in this case, I'm just going to select a few of the more fun looking symbols. So let's go for these cows.
Not that people will use cows on the plant floor.
Yeah, cows on the plant floor. It's not a good place, is it? Unless you're in a dairy. And that's it. That's configured. If I save and close that now, I can then add that symbol to a window. We have these new InTouch window types called window frames. Allow us a bit more flexibility. I'll just call this test. And I'll make it fit my screen resolution so you can see it in a much nicer format. Drag that on, and there it is. My carousel configured in an InTouch window. If I hit the runtime button, you'll see that now as part of my InTouch application, and you'll see the cows change and frequently roll around as we go through the little carousel presentation. So as that loads, as I said, InTouch Window Viewer loads without having to acquire a license. So it just makes it a little bit more quicker to fire up. In this case, it's just loading those graphics in from the toolbox. So it does take a little bit longer because they're not embedded into the window or into any windows. So it does take a little bit longer for the symbols to load in the first instance. Once it's loaded those, you'll see it rolls around quite quickly through those. So as I enabled the keyboard interaction, you can see that I can interact with that. And if I hit the center button or anywhere within the web widget, it will pause until I roll around again.
So this is perfect, as you said, for these big displays inside of a factory where you've got this rolling, you've got a lot of KPIs to show, and you can't just show them all this on one screen at once. So you can roll nicely through this. And I think one thing you said is these widgets are HTML5 based.
Yeah.
So does this mean it also works in the web client part of?
It's funny you should ask that, Dion, because that is part of my next discussion. So let's just close these down. I'll go back to the presentation. So we talked about the user experience and the usability. Now, InTouch Web has been around since update 1 of version 17 is when it was introduced. Back then, it was a read-only client. It had limited functionality. Throughout the versions of 2017, it had extra functionality and capability built into it. But as of version 2020, we've enabled read and write format, which makes it a much more useful tool. So if you've got it using it on a mobile, if you want to do alarm acknowledgements, things like that, really useful for that kind of stuff.
And this is the one that will run on any web browser. It doesn't need any plugins or anything. You just need an HTML5 web browser.
Correct. Any device it will run on. Yeah, like you say, HTML5 browser is all it needs. No client tools installed, no add-ins to download into your web browser. Straight HTML5. There is support for the Carousel widget. There is now extra support or additional support for InTouch applications. What that means is you can display a full InTouch application inside of the InTouch web client. So you get that if you've built your navigation into your InTouch application, if you've built user inputs into that, you can have all that functionality now within the InTouch web client. And there are mobile apps now available on your Apple or Android devices from the App Store or from the Google Play Store, whatever your Android store is. So those are available. I go back to my.
Well,
sorry,
if I must say, this is probably the part of this new version that really excites me. The cloud-based graphic storage is nice, but this actually, to me, is really, really a great new thing we can do.
Yeah, and what's really interesting as well is at the moment this tool this web client is really only used at a local level. So you don't use it remotely across an internet or intranet up into your corporate your corporate layers. But we are introducing later on in the year a InTouch web proxy object that you can put in a DMZ, in a demilitarized zone, and really extend the reach of your InTouch applications then out into the wider world, which makes it even more of a game changer later on in the year.
Yeah, so I think the important thing is not just the ability to put stuff on a web browser. It's how do you make it secure to do that? So that proxy is a very important thing. And I think, and the other thing that's important is that it uses secure sockets layer.
Yeah. I mean, that was one of the new features of the last version that was introduced in 2017 was the HTTPS connection. So you can encrypt the communications between the InTouch web client and your InTouch applications on your plant. So yeah, I mean, everything we do does have a cybersecurity strand to it, and as with the industrial graphics right now going through this cybersecurity update and enhancements, we try and build those in to every version. Let's have a look at the client. So in this case, I'm going to close down the application that I just had running. I'm going to use this new version of the InTouch demo application. So it's really been set up to show off the new capabilities within the standalone InTouch applications and within the InTouch web client as well.
So this demo app everybody gets when they install the new version.
Yeah, it used to be something you had to import as a package file. So it used to be a modern application. They've converted it now into a standalone application. So you don't need to import it and for it to take half an hour to import, because it is quite a large application. It's already built in now, and you just get it as part of the app when you install it, if you select it during the installation process anyway. So as I said earlier, the web service, you can stop and start that from the app manager. It's just the new button at the top there in the middle. New InTouch application, you can see that there. Click that to load it into Window Viewer, into Window Maker. So as part of InTouch Web Client, you have to have an InTouch application running in the background to collect your tag data, to then visualize that inside of your web client. That is different if you're using InTouch for System Platform. As System Platform acquires the data, you don't need to have an InTouch application running in order to visualize the applications that are part of your InTouch for part of your System Platform environment in the web client. So if I just start that demo app in runtime, I'll wait for it to start and then I'll start the web client. So we've got our InTouch application running there. You can see it's got a much more modern user look and feel in the demonstration app now than the one that you're probably very familiar with the reactors and the tanks in it. It's got much more dashboarding and functionality built in. So if I switch back to Window Maker and load the web client, you'll see that loads in our HTML5 browser.
So you could use Chrome or Internet Explorer, or my favorite, which is Firefox. Yeah, any HTML5 browser, including those on mobile devices. So Safari or Opera, anything like that, you can use. Google Chrome that you've mentioned, all those are available on mobile devices. Yes, you can use them. So once the InTouch web loads, what it's doing now, it's connecting into my InTouch application. It's looking at the InTouch application directory, getting the list of windows that are available, all the graphics that are available as part of the InTouch application, and it's loading those into a web browser format. You see, it takes a little bit of time to formulate all of the windows into the HTML5 page when it initially loads. It does convert them from their native format into HTML5 format. So it can take, depending on how big your graphics are and how much information is in them, it can take a little while for it to do its initial load. So I talked about read and write capabilities, functionality to get the data in and out of your InTouch applications. So let's just try to see if we can demonstrate some of that now. So if I click on the content button and then I click on Windows Forms, you'll see I'll be able to write to an InTouch tag from web client. So let's just wait for this to load. Shouldn't take more than a few seconds. Stu, on the Window Maker side, to get this working, is there huge amounts of configurations to do?
No, there's not. Any of your orchestra-based symbols will be present in here. If you're using the new InTouch frames, you can load those graphics straight into your InTouch web client.
So it means, does that mean you don't have to convert? There's not a conversion process that you do. You just got to have the graphics.
Yeah, if you're already using orchestra symbols or industrial graphics, as they're now called, yes, you can use this straight out of the box. There are tools available if you've got, let's say, we've got an InTouch 7.1 app that we want to migrate now and start to use this new technology. There are tools that once you've upgraded your 7.1 application to InTouch 2020 that will convert those native InTouch graphics that you've created way back when to the new orchestra symbols, and then you can use those within the InTouch web client. Is really easy. You can see there I've just created a text box, and that's populated a tag within InTouch that just says hello. Read and write capabilities, so if I enable an alarm or generate an alarm in this case, you can see I've got this little warning triangle. I can navigate through my application. I can interact with the alarm subsystem now as well from InTouch web client. So if I click on the alarm summary, I'll see that alarm in my alarm grid. If I select it, I can acknowledge it, and I can add my comment. That is written back to the alarm. You can see it's written back to the application. You can see I've got the acknowledgement there. If I disable the alarm again, you'll see that goes away. That information is all being recorded in that same tag dictionary. So it's just really showing that read-write capability. And you can see there the history of the alarm that we've just generated and acknowledged. More functionality that they've introduced in this version is the ability to backfill from your historical data. So previously we wouldn't have had data historically going back filled into our trend, but now you can see our InTouch application started around this time. We went into live mode here on our trend, but we've actually backfilled some of the data from our historical source.
And once again, this is full HTML5 trend. This is not, you didn't have to install the trend client or
no.
It just works.
It just works as part of update 3 in Windows 17. Windows 17 in InTouch 17. They did a conversion so that the InTouch trend and alarm.net controls are now converted to a HTML5 format. Supported only at the moment are those two controls as far as .NET and ActiveX goes. If you had third-party controls, you would have to find another way to develop your InTouch application to get around those controls that are no longer visible in, or not yet visible in the InTouch web client. And I told you how to configure the carousel. It is demonstrated in this new InTouch application. So if you click on the carousel button, you can see that now. So as Andy said about the new carousel widget, very useful if you've got a number of screens that you want to display on a loop whilst nobody's logged onto a station, or as Dion mentioned, if you've got large screen TVs that you want to display a number of different KPI boards for, you can have those displayed in this carousel or slideshow format, and it will roll around those on the time span or time series that you've got generated.
Okay, so at first I had to just load them up, but from there onwards they display quite quickly. I see our time is getting a bit short, Stu. So
yeah, that's me done with my demo. So if you want to continue from where I've left off, feel free to.
Yeah, I think the other thing we wanted to show, Andy, was just that mobile application. We've got a little video of that.
Yeah, I'll just share my screen now. You should be seeing that. So yeah, as Stu's mentioned, there is the app stores available, very similar to what you've just seen in the full trend client, but obviously through the app store applications instead. And in this case, we're just writing to a set point there, changing a set point value, but obviously we can also do alarm acknowledgement in the very similar way that Stu did. The point of having the actual applications for the mobile devices is that it displays it in the correct format for you, so you're not having to zoom in all the time and move around.
Right.
Just plays it again. So just for the last couple of slides, closing slides for me, and I can see we've had a few questions, so we'll get onto those quickly. I mentioned at the beginning very briefly about the Aviva Flex. What they've done with Aviva Flex, specifically with InTouch, is allowed a few different options, and they've called it an InTouch Unlimited. So yes, unlimited in terms of things like maximum tags to the technical limit of InTouch, which is a 60,000 tag limit. They are looking at increasing that in the next release that is due out later this year. But things like unlimited RDP connections you see there, unlimited web client connections. Yes, you can buy perpetual unlimited web client connections, but if you went down the Aviva Flex route, you could buy the right credits to give you the standard tier that would enable you to get all of those things out of the box, unlimited RDP connections, things like that. And then if you wanted to go that level above and actually want a bit more functionality out of some of the product set, included in the pro tier is everything at standard, but then looking at including things like a historian as well for that more data rich functionality and the data rich client set that you can get there. So the redeveloping and things like Aviva Flex in terms of that also bring that InTouch development built into that too, for that subscription period. So they are redefining it. It's not just a case of having a perpetual license split over the number of years. They are offering differentiators in that space. So by all means, it's something that we look at when we're looking at your requirements. So then lastly from me, just to go back to this picture and just introduce a little bit about what we've talked about today, because actually from a maturity perspective and a value, by doing some very small things and just by upgrading to the latest software or perhaps using some slightly different commercial model that will give us that storage of data to something like Historian, we could get a much richer collection of data and analysis of metrics. And with that industrial graphics that Stuart mentioned earlier on about available across the entire portfolio, we are standardizing our look and feel of our plant, regardless of platform, regardless of device, even OS, we can get the same look and feel across the board. And it really helps with that engineering efficiency for the likes of USIs or OEMs out there. And there's a couple of other things. We touched on InTouch Unlimited just a moment ago, so I won't cover that again. But then there's also the cloud element, and again, Stu alluded to that with his insight, and that is our cloud platform. And there's a complete native integration from InTouch, not just to things like the Historian stack that you saw, the local Historian, but also that Aviva Insight, that data repository in the cloud that gives you much more than just trends of your information. It is looking much further than that. And again, we have webinars that talk about that, but this is the reason we've done a webinar series, Dion, because we don't have time to talk about everything in one webinar. So I'll hand over to you for the last couple of slides and then we'll get into Q&A.
Yeah, I know we've only got a few minutes left. Literally one, but we'll stretch it a little bit. I know there's people that's got some questions that we need answering. I just want to remind you that this is one of 11, well, number 2 of 11 webinars. You can actually go back. If you missed the first one, you can go back to the first one and watch it, and we'll continue doing that during the series. But please make sure you go to that page and you can actually book. So if you want to book for the next one, you can just click on the little plus there and you can register, and so you can register for all the different ones. Next one, of course, is system platform, which is going to be as exciting as the one that you've just seen. So let's go quickly to the questions. First question in here is: the historian with InTouch is dedicated for only one InTouch application, or can it use with multiple applications?
It can absolutely be used with multiple applications. It always has done, even when it was just the import utility from Historian. You can utilize it, and as Stu showed in his demo, if you want to prefix or suffix it with the application name to make sure you know which one you actually store in there, so that the tag name has you're always making sure you store unique tag names, and you can do it that way if you prefer. But yes, multiple applications is a must.
Okay. Next one is: does it take the same amount of time whenever we launch the web client, or is it going to store in or cache it?
I think I'll answer that one. As you saw in my demonstration, the graphics took a little bit of time to load initially, but then when they were displayed for a second or third time, they were just instantly there. So yes, there is some caching going on for the graphics.
Okay, great, Stu. Does it take some? That one's done. I clicked the wrong button. In InTouch HMI client, we have enabling cache features. Likewise, do we have the same setting in web client? I think you just answered that.
Yep.
All right, let me say that one's done. Can the web client be used by multiple users with read-write capability to the same application, each having their own session?
Yes.
Yes, it can. Yeah, and it uses the same security methods as well.
Yeah, and you can even go so far as just supplying certain graphics to certain users or providing access. You can also do things like access level interaction as well. So if you wanted to limit who could change what, you can do that within your access levels within InTouch as well.
Next one's quite an interesting one. How are you expecting to manage security and compliance to standards such as HSE OG86 Purdue model? Appreciate this may be considered the old way of thinking, but still current expectations for any audits.
That's a great question, and it's something that I wouldn't say is an old way of thinking at all. It's still very much at the forefront of what people like Stuart do from a system architect perspective. We look at doing things like secure by design, and we held a whole series of events around how you secure not just the applications but the architecture itself, aligning to things like NIST and 62443 as the right standards. But making sure that you're hardening your networks, and we have a model and an approach that helps our customers to understand where the holes are in their security, to try and help those further. And we do that through things like security audits. So we do actually work closely with customers for that. I don't know if you've got anything to add, Stuart.
No, yeah, that's exactly what we do. That's the first thing that we always think of when we're providing architectures or architectural advice is things around standards. So ISO 95, OG 86, all of those come into the reckoning.
And I think the other important point is that so we've got a dedicated cybersecurity department within Solutions PT, which I also think is very important, where we employ security professionals, so people that are certified in this. So we don't just talk the talk. We've got people that've got years experience in this and can really guide you into what is the right way to make sure that you conform to these regulations.
Absolutely.
Next one is: have Wonderware information server reporting been revamped? If so, would there be a showcase for it? So this points forward, Andy.
Say again, sorry?
I say it points forward to some of our next webinars coming up about information management.
It does, but not information server specifically. Information server is a product that I suppose it was one of the products that was very first introduced as the web-based reporting type tool, and it was something that worked very well as like a container, so it would display InTouch graphics and things inside of it. You could embed your SQL Server reporting services. It had its own way of connecting to data, but one of the key things that it wasn't was HTML5 driven, which is what everything these days has to be. for the technologies going forward. So yes, it's still a supported product, and it's not something that gets shipped with the likes of something like System Platform anymore. It has to be requested. If you are upgrading, again, it has to be a requested product, because it's not something that is being actively developed and being revamped with new products and features. I think the information management portfolio that we've got now is much more feature rich than what Information Server ever was, and we have many more ways that we can do things, and I'm certain that we'll be able to exceed your expectations in what your requirements are for information management with some of the things that we have.
Yes, I would suggest you look at the next webinars coming up, because we've got some great stuff to share with you in that. Well, we've come to the end of this webinar, so I really want to thank Stu. Brilliant demo. Thanks, Stu.
Yeah, no problem. Always a pleasure, Dion.
And Andy, thank you very much for your insights into this Edge to Enterprise portfolio of ours, and thanks for enlightening us on what this 2020 thing means to us.
No problem, Dion. It's always a pleasure, like Stuart. And Stu, that was very brave, doing live demos. And don't they say, oh, never work with children, animals, or do live demos? I think it's
yeah.
Yeah, very brave.
So I wanted to say, okay, just thanks for everybody joining us today. I think you can stop I think we need to do a visual ending to this, Andy.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, because, you know, if you are on the on the bridge of, or you know, anywhere on the bridge of the starship, of course, the best way to end it off is to beam yourself out of there. So we're all going to beam ourselves out of here. Thanks for watching and join us for the next webinar. Bye bye.
All right, thanks everyone. Goodbye.
Bye.